Hi everybody!
Rumors are abundant Persona 6 will release next year. I think that's probable, though it's possible it gets pushed into 2026, but that's beside the point. We all have things we're wishing for with Persona 6, and I know I definitely have a fair few things I'm wishing for. Comment below what you're hoping for in Persona 6. Let's get into it. Okay, we already know what the color theme for Persona 6 is going to be thanks to Midori, and possibly thanks to the promotional art Atlus released during the 25th anniversary celebration 2 years ago. If you look closely at the promotional artwork, the previous protagonists all had green paint on them. Given this, what are some themes we could see thanks to the primary color being green? What themes come to mind when you think of the color green? Some that I can think of off the top of my head are health, wealth, and lush, vibrant green environments. Now we have to keep in mind Atlus is very deliberate with their theming. There's always additional meaning to everything they pick. So what are the inverse of the things I just mentioned? Sickness, poverty, and industrialization. Given Persona 6 could go back to a more rural setting, like the town of Inaba from Persona 4, they could really play with those themes and do them justice. Let's explore the health and sickness part of the theme first. Health and sickness is actually a theme I'd love to see Atlus tackle. I've made no secret of it on other platforms, but I'm actually a creator with a fair few physical disabilities. Sometimes that prevents me from making content as frequently as I'd like. Hell, I've even got a minor speech impediment, hence the monotone delivery. But I don't let that fucking stop me. Am I ever going to be the next Mr. Beast or whatever the fuck else is popular on YouTube these days? No, I never will be. I also don't want to be. There's one thing I'm not very good at, and that's kissing ass. I'm far too counterculture for that. I've always been counterculture. I always will be. But that's one of the reasons I love Persona 5 so much. It took that counterculture spirit and used it to deconstruct modern Japanese society. Now I know someone's going to come at me in the comments about being some crazed commie because I mentioned wanting disabled representation in a fucking video game. But here's the thing, not everyone is able-bodied. This also means Atlus can deconstruct the perception modern society has towards the disabled, not just Japanese society. Of course, they still have to make it appeal to the Japanese. These games are made primarily for them. It's just weebs like me in the West who enjoy these types of games. But imagine this, one of your party members, doesn't matter which sex they are, will be the Chariot Arcana, which by the way represents change and moving forward. When it's reversed, it represents being stuck in place. A disabled character would actually be the perfect one to explore this theme, because guess what? Disabled individuals often feel stuck in their lives. We eventually can get moving forward if some things go our way, but we've got the cards stacked against us. Again, this mirrors the Chariot Arcana. Have the major driving factor for this confidant and party member be them coming to terms and learning to live with their disability, whatever it happens to be. This would be compelling and would lend well into the potential theme of health within the game. Hell, you could even have them be a previously able-bodied individual. As for the money theme, they could do a lot with that as well. They even touched on poverty to a degree with Yusuke in Persona 5. Admittedly, they used him as the butt end of jokes, but that isn't to say they can't use poverty as a core theme for the game. For example, trauma was one of the core themes of Persona 3, finding the truth was the core theme of Persona 4, and rebellion was the core theme of Persona 5. Also at this point, poverty and wealth inequality is a major issue facing the world right now. It's touching everybody's lives to some degree right now, whether you want to admit it or not. So they could easily make it so that the community of characters that comprises your party members and the majority of your social links come from a small town or village, and most of them live in poverty. This would then set up a group of individuals who want to develop the town further in some way as the main bad guys, at least before the big bad shows up at the end. Because, you know, that's a Persona trope at this point in time. Also, let's be real, the final theme I mentioned of the environment plays in perfectly with the previous two themes I mentioned. One's health is actively tied in with their environment. In a lot of cases, you need money for good health. Also, a lot of development destroys environments. which you could then tie into whatever the metaverse winds up being for this iteration. If the environment and development winds up being one of the big themes, we could have the metaverse be a gigantic forest that's distorted in some way. Think some Alice in Wonderland type scenario here. Also, since forests are going to be used to some extent for Metaphor ReFantasio, Atlus can simply reuse some assets and apply a different filter to them to make them look more in line with the Persona 6 aesthetics. That's working smarter, not harder. Something more game devs have to learn in this day and age. So, I've covered a general feel for what the themes we can garner from the color of the game. I'd like to briefly discuss what types of Persona we could see if these themes are used. For this wish, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, since I don't think it's all that interesting. I think the persona for this game should be focused primarily on British folklore and folk heroes. It just lends itself well to the fantasy version of the metaverse I mentioned earlier. But what types of persona would you like to see Atlus include in this game? Let me know in the comments. Obviously, we do have a few Celtic and British inspired persona already, but I would love to see them be doubled down on. Plus, just imagine William Wallace as a high-level persona. It would be super funny, especially if Atlus paid homage to this Braveheart scene.
One chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
I kind of covered this in my Why Persona 6 Needs to Be a Celebration of the Franchise video. Check that one out when you finish this video, as it's absolutely awesome content, and it's what inspired me to cover this topic in the first place. But Persona 6 needs to feature previous characters in some way beyond just them appearing as references as part of the world building. Previous party members featuring upgraded skill sets would be welcomed, as would previous confidants. If you know anything about tarot, each card represents the fool along his journey through the world. So technically, our roles are ever changing as we grow. Atlus could reflect this by having characters we've met previously appearing and having a slightly different arcana to show how they've changed. This, of course, wouldn't be necessary, but it'd be incredibly cool. At minimum, though, a character or two who was previously a party member should show up as a playable character, or maybe have younger characters who were previous confidants for the previous protagonists should show up and have them be party members. It'd show just how interconnected the Persona world could be, albeit not as interconnected as every single game in the Trails universe. But it'd be awesome to see Atlus revisiting fan favorites, since Persona 6 really should be a celebration of everything Persona to date. At this point, the Persona and Trails games are the most feature-rich turn-based JRPGs out there. I feel like this is part of their appeal. For a lot of turn-based games, the mechanics stay fairly basic. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, and sometimes a vanilla game is exactly what you need to cleanse your palate from all of the feature-rich games out there. Too stressed because of life? Put on a simple game and have fun. But if you want a turn-based game that will drip-feed you mechanics and requires you to engage with them in a meaningful way, then yeah, modern Persona games and Trails are your best options out there right now. And the thing is, they could always make these games far deeper. One of the best ways they could accomplish this is by including the shuffle time mechanic, which makes grinding a lot more interesting, and they could include the negotiation mechanic as well. By doing so, they could make the item pool more diverse, give players extra ways to get money, and gain new personas. It'd also keep combat far more engaging, because a Shadow's personality determines if it will stop battling for a negotiation. Again, adding more depth to the game and preventing the combat from becoming just a button-mashing affair, as more simplistic turn-based games tend to turn into. So what else could Atlus add to the game to keep it fresh? They could borrow one of my favorite mechanics from Trails, that being the Brave Orders. For those who haven't played the back half of the Erebonian arc, Brave Orders were a mechanic that debuted in Trails of Cold Steel 3, and were included right into Reverie. I don't believe they make an appearance during Trails Through Daybreak, which will release this July for the West. If I'm wrong on their appearance, please do correct me. but adapting the Brave Orders would be a welcome addition and would keep the gameplay fresh. Plus, if Atlus did include them, you know they'd have their own flair. How they worked in the Trails games is you'd accumulate a certain number of Brave points by doing linked attacks. You could then spend those Brave points to gain a buff in battle for a certain number of turns. On a surface level, Atlus could do something like that, but include more interesting aspects to it, like additional buffs if you have a persona of a given type in your party, which would in turn lead to deeper combat. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Give your players more options. Don't take them away from us. This point is one that I kind of agree with the consensus, at least partially. I feel like we should get 1 or 2 adult party members, maybe have the protagonist be a college-aged individual. There's a lot of potential there. Plus, here's another thing to consider. Yes, Persona's primary audience is high schoolers, even though it has an M for mature rating in North America. Its rating in Japan is for 15+. This is something I feel needs to be adopted in the ESRB rating system, an older teen rating. We already have everyone 10+, which is the target audience Ratchet & Clank has always tried to bring in. If you think an older teen rating should be created, hit the subscribe button. But that's the thing, Persona covers topics that will resonate with its target demographic. By including an older member or two to the party, they can add more nuance to the storyline. The health, money, and environment themes would appeal to more of the older demographic. That's not to say these themes won't resonate with a younger audience, though. Health and poverty issues can strike anyone at any age, however, younger people tend to care about the environment more than the older generations. However, I do not think having all of the main characters as adults would be a good decision. Just 1 or 2. If you agree with that statement, hit the like button. Hit it even if you don't, so this video can spread to more Persona fans. It really helps the channel out. So what are you hoping to see from Persona 6? Comment below. Thanks go out to my current channel members, R. Campbell and Dani Boy. If you'd like to help the channel further, you can do so by hitting the join button or the link in the description. Want more of my Atlus content? Check out why you need to support Metaphor ReFantazio, or check out my video on why Persona 6 needs to celebrate the franchise as a whole. Until next time, keep blazing that trail.